Hi, this is Admin Bharti and we are here at KubeCon in San Diego, and today we have with us once again Jason Schyff. You are CEO of SoftIron. First of all, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you very much. It's great.
Last time when we met at Open Infrastructure Summit or OpenStack Summit. Now we are here at KubeCon. SoftIron is a Ceph storage company. What are you doing at KubeCon?
We see Kubernetes as obviously a very emerging opportunity for persistent storage. So as a storage company, we always have to be keeping an eye out for new technologies and new ways that we can deploy Ceph. Ceph natively is a cloud native technology. It's sort of ready to go out of the box. So as Kubernetes matures through its life cycle, we're starting to see the need for persistent storage within the underlying architecture from Kubernetes. We were at KubeCon in Barcelona to really sort of test the waters and see where the opportunities lie. And now we wanted to sort of unleash our US team on a different customer base that's attending KubeCon here in San Diego.
When we look at cloud native space, where Kubernetes plays a big role, I think Kubernetes is the hammer that everybody is using.
Right.
So, and when it comes to storage, Ceph seems like the only solution there, or that's the most dominant one?
Yeah, I think it is, very much to that idea of everyone's carrying around Kubernetes as this hammer, and they're sort of looking for nails. And it started as very much a developer-first platform where people were building very little apps, deploying them around. And now people have gone through that validation cycle and have worked out that, hey, Kubernetes has real application beyond the small containerized orchestration. And so they're looking for bigger workloads to go into containers. And Ceph's sort of right at that point where it's ready to tie in. It's sort of native with S3, plugs into the cloud. Ceph is going through a containerization project within the Ceph community that will come to light sort of the beginning of 2020. And that's when we really think that between Ceph, Rook, which is sort of leading orchestration of Ceph into Kubernetes, and then the containerization of Ceph, that's really going to sort of change the way that people think about what we call storage, but in the context of containers and Kubernetes, we think of as persistent storage.
Right. And when we also look at cloud native or Kubernetes space, mostly we think about stateless workloads, but stateful workload is also their companies are containerizing almost everything.
Right.
So from that point of view, how Ceph becomes more and more critical and important.
Yeah, so I think what's happened is we've had the application which has been containerized. That's been around for a while. Now we're looking at how do databases start to tie into those containers, where the containers can spring up and down as the workload increases or decreases. You still have to have a database. And as soon as you have a database, you have to have a data store. But also being able to actually keep where those container images get to, it all has to live somewhere. And so containers are this wonderful idea of being able to deploy the same thing every time in as many different instances as you need, in sort of this elegant, elastic approach. But you have to have the data stored somewhere. That really, in sort of a modern environment, wants to be object storage. You may want to also keep other aspects of your business, whatever that is, running in a store. And so Ceph is perfect for that because it sort of wants to play in both of those arenas. And as we drive that project forward to make it more friendly for Kubernetes, I think we'll just see a larger adoption in general. And sort of taking leaps and bounds on traditional storage. So the enterprise storage vendors, NetApps, EMCs, they're all having to catch up with a completely new technology base in order to approach and support Kubernetes. And Ceph just wants to sort of do that out of the box.
And if I'm not wrong, SoftIron predates Kubernetes and all these technologies. A lot of your customers, now they are trying to embrace Kubernetes. So how do you see them embracing Kubernetes with Ceph, and what challenges or problems they come across?
Yeah, so when we started SoftIron, one of our core goals was to try to make Ceph much easier to use. And I think we're getting there through that process with some of the tools that we've developed, and that's helping support our customers who are moving from legacy sort of on-premise storage into something that's cloud native, hybrid cloud, that can kind of share the workload between what's on-premise and in a cloud provider. I think we've seen the feasibility studies of Kubernetes come and go, and people are now looking to put that into real production. I think Kubernetes of itself is incredibly complicated, and there's a number of projects that are trying to address the complexity of Kubernetes. Really what we want to make Ceph and why people would come and choose SoftIron and our Hyperdrive Ceph solution is you don't have to think about the Ceph. Kubernetes is complicated enough. Orchestrating all those containers and dealing with dynamic workloads is very tricky. So we just make the Ceph part easy, and so you get all the benefits of sort of an easy to run enterprise storage solution with all the added plus pieces of what's essentially cloud native, ready to go. Because we really see this hybrid cloud as the end goal. I think that's where everyone's going. I like to think of technology sort of like a pendulum, and it starts and it's being stuck on-premise storage, and it's swung all the way across to cloud everything. And what we're really seeing is it's more cloud native, right? It's the pendulum swinging to anneal somewhere in the middle, which is really this hybrid cloud notion where you can use things like Kubernetes and containers and Ceph or object storage. You can use them on-premise. You can use them on the cloud. You can have a very open line of communication between those two things. And all it is finding all of these little bits and pieces. So Rook is a great example that natively helps Ceph tie straight into Kubernetes. And I think what we'll see is those two kind of anneal together where, Rook may become a part of Ceph. It may just be a very, very close piece of the puzzle that you need if you want to put persistent storage under Kubernetes.
I was talking to Rob Hirschfeld from Racken yesterday, and he was like, there is one of the unpopular opinion he was talking about, and that was that it's really hard to manage your data center. It's expensive, and he was like, it's more or less like a marketing by public cloud provider that just move everything to the cloud. Right. The fact is that no, you can very easily maintain and manage your data center depending on what you need. So compliance could be a big issue. Security could be a big issue, and a lot of things are there. So from your perspective, I want to understand, today's world, is it like really okay to just move everything to the cloud?
I mean, I think it's a hard answer. It's a hard answer to give because it really depends on what your workload is. I think the cloud is great and it allows you to do a lot of amazing things with very, very little capital outlay. I think there's certain things that you want to keep closer to yourself as a business, depending on what that information is. And I think it's very difficult for certain organizations to commit to putting your data or my personal data in something that's essentially managed by a third party. I think by adopting cloud native technologies in either an on-premise solution or a co-located solution, you sort of get that best of both worlds of cloud native has become much easier to manage, and then you still have that sort of security aspect where it's your machines or it's trusted equipment that's under your control. But you can still back up stuff into S3 buckets. You can still use Google Cloud. You could use a serverless infrastructure, but you could make your store or inside your data center the endpoint for all of those actions. So I think it's really about, it's not saying cloud is good or cloud is bad. There's a spot for both of them. It's really about what are the technologies that really enable that. And I think that's why it's great to see, KubeCon be not just about Kubernetes, but about all these other cloud native projects that are here to really grow this ecosystem. So we're not all betting on one technology like we kind of all did with OpenStack. It's really this group of applications and projects and technology bases that really enable to have that flexibility. Yeah, you can put it in AWS or GCP, but you can also put it in your own data center. And I think if you start to look beyond just those to things like what used to be called Mesosphere, I think it's DI2Q. Those guys did a great job of essentially handling the hard work after you've set up the data center. Really to say, hey, you should be able to manage a data center like it's managing one server. And so I think, looking at how they've done things, they're working very closely on expanding their portfolio of, dealing with storage providers, dealing with all of the cloud providers, and starting to layer that stuff on. There's tools to make these things easier. It's sort of back to this idea of the pendulum always swings, right? And it kind of ends up somewhere in the middle. That's where I think we'll get to is, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Things get really difficult, people just work it out, and there's lots of smart people around here who are working on those exact problems.
We are at the end of 2019, and as we go into 2020, what kind of trends you're seeing in this space? Because things are moving very fast, very rapidly. From the perspective of Ceph storage and cloud-native workloads?
Yeah, so I think more focus on things becoming really cloud-native, where there's no middleware layers to be able to plug these things in. It's just really happening. I think whoever cracks the code of making Kubernetes really manageable and easy to wrangle, and there's a couple of players in that space. I think whoever cracks that's a really big point to get to a large adoption in the enterprise, and enterprise not being Google and Amazon, but being Procter and Gamble and Mercury Insurance, that really getting into those spots. And I think we'll start to see that. I think the early adopters have kind of crested that wave, and now 2020 we'll start to see bigger enterprises adopt those and get rid of all this legacy junk that's been kicking around for the last decade.
Jason, once again, thanks for sitting down with me and talking about the whole storage, Ceph, and Kubernetes landscape. And it's good to see you at KubeCon, and which also means that I'll be seeing you at more events in next year.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always great to be on the show, and absolutely, we'll be seeing a lot of each other next year.
Thank you.